This is a story of power, ideology, and the unintended consequences that shaped American democracy. Tonight we investigate a question that strikes at the heart of American politics. Why, in a nation founded on the principles of choice and representation, do we find ourselves locked in an endless battle between just two dominant political parties? The answer lies buried in the very foundations of our republic, in the fierce philosophical battles of the Founding Fathers, and in a series of constitutional decisions that would echo through centuries of American political life. What emerges is not just a history lesson, but a revelation about how structural forces beyond any individual's control have created the political reality we live with today. It begins with a fundamental truth that shocks many Americans. The Founding Fathers never intended for political parties to exist at all. George Washington, in his farewell address of 1796, delivered a prophetic warning that reverberates through our polarized era. The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, is itself a frightful despotism. Yet even as Washington spoke these words, the very men who had crafted the Constitution were already dividing into hostile camps that would become America's first political parties. The catalyst was a brilliant but arrogant man whose vision would define American capitalism, Alexander Hamilton. As the nation's first Secretary of the Treasury, Hamilton unleashed a revolutionary financial program that would transform America from a collection of agrarian states into an industrial powerhouse. His plan was breathtaking in its ambition: create a national bank, assume state debts, and use federal power to promote manufacturing and commerce. But this wasn't just economic policy, it was a complete reimagining of what America could become. Standing in fierce opposition was Thomas Jefferson, the philosopher-president who had penned the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson saw Hamilton's March program as nothing less than a betrayal of the Revolutionary War itself. Where Hamilton envisioned a strong central government modeled on Great Britain, Jefferson championed states' rights and the wisdom of ordinary farmers over financial elites. This wasn't mere political disagreement. It was a battle for the soul of the American experiment. Hamilton's Federalists represented merchants, bankers, and urban professionals who believed in strong federal institutions. Jefferson's Democratic Republicans spoke for farmers, laborers, and those who feared that centralized power would recreate the very tyranny they had fought to escape. The presidential election of 1800 marked a turning point that would reshape American politics forever. What historians call the Revolution of 1800 was a vicious campaign that makes modern elections look civilized by comparison. Federalists accused Jefferson of being a radical atheist who would bring French revolutionary terror to American shores. Jefferson's supporters painted the Federalists as crypto-monarchists plotting to crown themselves kings. When Jefferson finally won, something unprecedented happened in world history. Power transferred peacefully from one political faction to another. But the victory came at a cost that would haunt American democracy. The Federalist Party, unable to compete with Jefferson's populist appeal, began a slow death spiral that would leave them extinct within 2 decades. By the 1820s, America faced a political paradox. With the Federalists gone, the Democratic Republicans dominated so completely that they had no meaningful opposition. This era of good feelings, as historians dubbed it, contained the seeds of its own destruction. Without an external enemy to unite against, the party began devouring itself from within. The crisis exploded in 1824 when 4 Democratic-Republican candidates sought the presidency. Andrew Jackson, the war hero and champion of the common man, won both the popular vote and a plurality in the Electoral College. But he fell short of the required majority, throwing the election into the House of Representatives, where backroom deals would determine the nation's leader. When John Quincy Adams emerged victorious after striking a deal with Henry Clay, Jackson's supporters erupted in fury. They branded it the corrupt bargain, a conspiracy by aristocratic elites to steal democracy from the people. This wasn't just political rhetoric. It was a declaration of war that would birth the modern Democratic Party and fundamentally alter American political culture. Jackson's movement represented something new in world politics, a truly mass Democratic Party that appealed directly to ordinary voters over the heads of established elites. When Jackson won the presidency in 1828, he brought with him a revolutionary concept that government should serve the common man rather than the wealthy few. But Jackson's populist revolution sparked an equally powerful counter-revolution. His opponents, led by Henry Clay and Daniel Webster, formed the Whig Party to resist what they saw as dangerous demagoguery. The Whigs championed economic development, moral reform, and the idea that government could be a positive force for progress and prosperity. This ideological divide between Democrats and Whigs established patterns that persist today. Democrats celebrated individual liberty and limited government, opposing banks and corporations as tools of elite oppression. Whigs embraced what they called the American system, using federal power to build infrastructure, promote education, and drive economic growth. The mathematical forces that lock America into two-party dominance become clear when we examine what political scientists call Duverger's law. Named after French scholar Maurice Duverger, this principle holds that winner-take-all electoral systems inevitably produce two-party competition, while proportional representation systems allow multiple parties to flourish. America's Electoral College and single-member congressional districts create a brutal zero-sum game, where coming in second means getting nothing. Unlike parliamentary systems where parties can form coalitions and share power, American elections are winner-take-all contests that punish vote-splitting and reward strategic behavior. Consider the psychological trap this creates for voters. If you prefer the Green Party but fear the Republican candidate, you're forced into strategic voting, choosing the Democrat not because you love their platform, but because it's your best chance of preventing the outcome you most dread. Political scientists call this the spoiler effect, and it systematically eliminates third-party alternatives. The structural barriers go far beyond electoral math. Over decades, Democrats and Republicans have erected legal and institutional obstacles that make third-party competition nearly impossible. Ballot access laws require new parties to collect hundreds of thousands of signatures and pay enormous fees. Presidential debate thresholds exclude candidates who can't reach 15% in polls, a catch-22 that prevents unknown candidates from gaining. The exposure needed to reach that threshold, campaign finance rules further entrench two-party dominance. The major parties receive automatic federal funding and have established networks of donors, PACs, and super PACs that can raise hundreds of millions of dollars. Third parties start from zero, facing the impossible task of building national organizations from scratch every election cycle. The media ecosystem reinforces this duopoly by treating politics as a perpetual horse race between two teams. Cable news networks organize programming around Democrat versus Republican conflicts, while political coverage focuses on partisan strategy rather than policy alternatives. This creates what communications scholars call binary framing, the assumption that every issue has exactly two legitimate sides. Perhaps most powerfully, America's two-party system has colonized our political imagination. Generations of Americans have been socialized to think in binary terms: liberal versus conservative, red state versus blue state, us versus them. This artificial polarization makes it literally difficult for many voters to conceive of alternatives. The global perspective reveals just how unusual America's political constraint really is. Germany's Bundestag regularly features 5 or 6 significant parties representing distinct ideological positions. Canada maintains 3 major national parties plus regional ones. Even the United Kingdom, despite using first-past-the-post elections, has seen the rise of the Scottish National Party and previously the Liberal Democrats as power brokers. The economic costs of America's two-party gridlock are staggering. Political economists estimate that partisan polarization costs the economy hundreds of billions of dollars annually through policy uncertainty, regulatory flip-flopping, and the inability to address long-term challenges like infrastructure decay and climate change. When every issue becomes a partisan battlefield, evidence-based policymaking becomes nearly impossible. Yet breaking free from the two-party trap would require constitutional changes that the 2 major parties have no incentive to support. Reforms, like ranked choice voting, proportional representation, or eliminating the Electoral College, would threaten their duopoly. As political scientist Stephen Levitsky observes, America's parties have become like cartels, using democratic rules to systematically exclude competition while maintaining the appearance of choice. This is the paradox at the heart of American democracy. A system designed to maximize representation has evolved into one that severely constrains it, trapping 330 million Americans in an endless cycle between 2 increasingly polarized alternatives that many find unsatisfying but feel powerless to change.